Right, everyone, it's Canon here. This is just going to be a quick overview after, obviously I had my round 3 yesterday. So for me, the Tabletop Simulator Spring 2019 Aristeia League is now over. You'll be able to see the videos for that. If you haven't already seen them, you probably should, because I'll be looking at how my characters have done and what I think I could have done better in terms of lineup. And obviously that warrants some discussion, which could be spoilers for the matches. So if you haven't already done so, and you want to, then feel free. Now, obviously, in my first round, it was a close, which unfortunately I didn't manage to record. It was a close match against Roadrunner for Scorched Earth, which I didn't lose closely. In the second round, I got a very narrow win against Tips and Tricks, going down to the final roll. And the third match, if you've watched that, was quite brutal. I don't think I've had a loss that hard so far. Obviously I still could. But obviously with this not being an official Aristeia General League event, Global League event even, it wasn't as important to win, so I used it as an opportunity to try out some characters which I didn't have much experience with, or that I hadn't really used before, which I feel quite a lot of the other players probably did as well. Here you can see the stats updated as of the end of round 2. They haven't got the round 3 stats up yet, as I was probably waiting for everyone to finish their round 3, because we managed to play our game, I think, a day after the pairings were announced, so there's still a lot of time for the other groups to finish up. So when I was coming into this initially, I was wanting to try out particularly the legendary Bahadurs, because the day before actually signing up for this event, I had been at a real life tournament in Cardiff where some people had brought out the legendary Bahadurs, but I hadn't had access to them myself at that point, so I'd seen a few things. Like, I noticed that even their Corey Queen is quite popular. So I wanted to see, get my hands on them, see how they work. And that's part of the reason why I brought in Shona Oberon and Boss. Additionally, along with obviously all the nice silencing and state control stuff, which I'd seen fairly early on in Oberon's development, I saw that just being able to draw so many tactics, it's effectively a Bill buff, who'd obviously been buffed a lot more heavily with the release of Hannibal, and I thought I wanted to try all 3 of them together, or at least some combination of the 3, because I really like Bill as a character, but quite often in tournament situations I find myself sidelining him for Luna, just because of her extra range and the fact that she can very easily 100 to 0 even the more tankier members of the lineup. I knew that I was probably going to face off against some Musashis or Massacres or some other melee nasties, so I wanted immobilization, which is why I brought Tao Wu, because he's got a bit of a reputation around here of being not the the best, and that meant I wanted Hexa as well to provide a secondary source for mobilization in case Tauru didn't live up to it, along with obviously the fact that Hexa has lots of displacements, which would be very good if I used her in Witchland, in the event I didn't. But just having that option, like potentially even threatening it so that she could possibly be banned out. I can't remember if she was the one who was banned. I don't think she was. But just having that threat there, that they could get like 2 or 3 people into the zone, and then as long as I have Hexa last, she could just walk up and throw them all out. Like in that particular scenario, she's very strong. Which she should be, because it's obviously named after her. And then finally I just had Parvati to provide some state control, and another fast mobile character to try and help score, since with the exception of Witchland, the missions are very much, they require a lot of moving right across the hexadome. You need a very agile team for Scorched Earth and Capture the Flag. And I think that's probably where I fell down. Well, one of the areas I fell down. So, looking back over it, Oberon, excellent. Can't praise him enough. Even with, like, obviously the synergy of Bill Hannibal, like drawing back through the deck twice, just being able to pay 3 action points on someone who already has 5 movement, so can move a decent amount, and then use the action to draw whatever card you want from the deck, and probably get a switch to draw another tactic. Like, that's really, really strong. Just guaranteeing, like, you have no or amputate or, like, whatever card you need to set up your combo turn 1. Yeah, Oberon is, I'm definitely going to be fielding him a lot more. Not that I could field him before, but he'll almost certainly be in like 90% of my lineups from now on. Shona, good. I don't think Musashi is still generally going to be a lot easier to slot into any composition, just because he's so much more mobile with his 5 move and Kaze Tachino, and being able to do multiple attacks, like combo his attacks one into another. Like, he still clearly has advantages over Shona, and one I hadn't really appreciated before my 3rd round, which I now am very aware of, is Musashi is 6 initiative and Shona's only 4. So Musashi is going to be outspeeding basically everyone in the hexadome. Like, only Gata's going to be able to go faster than an underdog Musashi, whereas an underdog Shona is still probably going to go last, except against tanks. But that being said, she does a lot of damage, and she has displacements, so if you are using Shona, things like Hexa and 8-ball become less important. Like, you can kind of get away with not having them as long as you have a Shona with enough dice. Additionally, like, if people are sitting in a scoring zone that you can just drop back in from the infirmary from, even if you're on only 3 energy, you can broadsword to splat the squishy support and then just amputate the guy guarding him, and that's 2 free kills. And over the course of it, you're probably going to end up getting enough of symbols to trigger your switch, which means that on the next turn you'll be back up at 5 energy. yeah, like, I don't think she's an auto-include, but she's definitely a very interesting alternative to Musashi, particularly in missions where displacement is critical. Like, I can see her really causing a problem for King of the Hill, like, center space hogging Maximus comps. Hannibal, he's Hannibal. Very lethal with the right positioning, always giving big buffs. Mine didn't seem to do quite as well as the opponent's Hannibal's, but I'll let that slide. Yeah, I hadn't really considered, like, obviously I knew the power of code dive and just being able to deck out using like all your super powerful tactics and then just folding them back in and doing it again. And that obviously really shines with Oberon and Wild Bill. But I hadn't considered until the third game power of code blitz and just being able to reroll and it not going to the discard, so that if you do deck out immediately, you can just keep drawing back blitz over and over again, and basically ensuring that you get average or better rolls on everything. Like, that's very, very strong. Like, props to Tribulus for working that out. I certainly am. Bill definitely does a lot better now that he has Oberon and Hannibal. I don't know. I think with those two at his back, he can be a lot better than Hexa, Luna even. But I don't know if it's enough to justify effectively 3 spaces of a 4-man team, with 2 of them being supports. Luna's definitely still got a lot more general applicability, like Musashi does against Shona. But Bill is a very good choice when supported with these. And I'll definitely have to give him a lot more consideration in future. Tao Wu, I can see his strengths, like being able to just walk into melee with someone and then deliberately fail 2 disengages to immediately make them discard 2 tactics cards. It's pretty good. Being able to like blink across the map through a pathway of smoke. I think he can go 4 spaces at a time, 5 energy. Yeah, he can potentially go like, what, 20 spaces? Let me check that. Yeah, 1 to 3 adjacent to it, so 1 to 4, 5 energy. That'll be 20 spaces, assuming that you've already set up the smoke path. So Tao Wu definitely can be strong. I think, though, his 3 movement really, really hurts him. Like, if you just put him in the wrong part of the map, he can spend literally the entire game trying to become relevant and failing. I don't think I'll field Tao Wu, at least certainly not without having a Cosmo to just set up smoke for him. Because when he's up close, he can be a nightmare. Like, he can be their worst nightmare. but he really struggles to get there on his own. Parvati, jack of all trades. Like, I think we've all got Parvati pretty figured out now. Like, great scorer, decent shooter, good state control, particularly now that we're getting like lots of poison and burning. And also like okay healer. Boss is really weird. I'm gonna need more time to figure out Boss. He seems like he's kind of a grab bag. Little niche things that are situationally useful, but that you could find an individual character for each that does all of them better. Like, he's got the dazzle and the jumping over people of Garter. He's got a relatively decent attack. He's got good defense backed up by Icol, making him surprisingly tanky up close. Obviously, which is then fortified by very easy application of the stun tokens. Like, yeah, he seems like he'll always be fairly useful, but never necessarily the best at anything. And I don't know if I necessarily like that. I like having clear roles within my team, like you are the scorer, you are the DPS, you're the tank. With obviously some hybridization, like Musashi's a DPS scorer. But Boss doesn't really do that, he just does a bit of everything. And not even necessarily as well as Parvati. I don't know. I definitely think Boss can have use and can be strong, but I don't know if he suits my playstyle personally. With all that being said, I think if I had the opportunity to go back and change my lineup for these same scenarios, Scorched Earth, Witchland, and then obviously capture the flag, I'm pretty sure I'd keep Bill. I'd keep Oberon, I'd keep Hannibal, I'd keep Shona. They've all done great for me. They're all very, very... Like, it gives me a lot of killing power, a lot of deck control. I drop Tao Wu first. Without Cosmo, I just don't think he's worth it in such mobile scenarios where you have to cross the hexadome literally from one side to the other. He could be useful in Witchland, because obviously that's a lot more condensed around the centre, but I don't think it's worth taking him just for that one scenario. So in place of Tao Wu, I would probably take Laxmi, just for added state removal, and for obviously for Fairy Dust, for debuffer, for Atom, and also for the fact that Laxmi can move at least 8 spaces per turn, and quite often a lot more, using her standard switch. So I think Laxmi would be a very strong swap for that, and the first swap I make to this lineup. Next, I'd probably drop Hexa. I'm a lot less confident on this one, but again, as I mentioned, I was only really taking her for Witchland and to provide a secondary source of immobilization because I wasn't sure how good Tau was going to be, and because I didn't want melee monsters to ruin me. So, with that being said, I'd need someone who can kind of fill those niches of being able to displace people and being able to immobilize, and I think Valkyrie would be a better pick for both, along with obviously providing another killer in the lineup, another threat. Because Valkyrie can just run up, immobilize them, and then when she tries to disengage, assuming she doesn't just want to smack them in the face, she'll be looking at orange, blue, blue, minimum. So she can very easily do that. Hit and run, immobilize and get away from the scary melee people. Assuming she doesn't just want to paste them again. Because Valkyrie can do that, unlike Hexa. I'd also next drop boss for Gata. Because again, boss, like particularly the swim move and dazzle makes him already feel kind of like Gata. And since these are two very mobile missions, Scorched Earth, Capture the Flag, I think Gata at the very least draws out the ban on both of them. And if not, then I've got a very powerful scorer to just cover the Hexstone in 1, maybe 2 turns. And unlike Bixie, Gata doesn't suffer massively when she's coming in off the bench, and she also doesn't care about Dazzled. Like, obviously, unlike Bixie, she can be immobilized, but as human, Legendary Bahadurs is so new, I think we'll see a lot more Dazzled tokens than necessarily immobilization. My final switch would be Parvati. And I'm kind of on the fence about this one, but I have a very soft spot for Dart. Like, I've liked the character since the release of Human Fate. I've kind of maybe sort of got her to work. And I think that in a composition including Hannibal and Lakshmi, she's going to have more than enough dice to just delete people. And I think that that's something I would like to see. So yeah, if I could do it again, that would be my lineup. It would be Gata, Hannibal, Valkyrie, Oberon, Dart, Shona, Lakshmi, Bill. Obviously, we can't account for things like dice or bans, but I think with just those, I'd do a lot better. Looking forward to future Aristos. Obviously, we've got the Chemical Brothers coming out, and we've seen this nice image. I know a lot of people have talked about this particular silhouette and how it might look like a particular Monkey Man, but ever since the image came out, I've been a lot more interested in this guy behind Backman. Like, this silhouette seems a little familiar, like that head, maybe that kind of rim on the back. I wonder, no, it can't be. It can't be. I'm just imagining things. But as we do have 8 more Aristos coming this year, it's interesting to think about what kind of things could be added in a gameplay sense. I think, given how we've seen poison, for instance, extend from being just a thing used on Garter's paint suppressants to then being quite key to Dart, and now obviously the Chemical Brothers. Or for instance, Stunned being originally just Laxmi, and then being on pretty much all of the legendary Bahadurs. Like, I think we can extrapolate from that. And I only considered this yesterday, but a thing I'd really like to see would be more use of the +2 initiative tokens from Parvati. Like, I think a character who could give those out, maybe not as trivially as like Laxmi gives out Focus, but who can give out that buff quite readily to their teammates. That would be really interesting. Because obviously then it completely redefines the calculations of who's going when in a way that just being the underdog can't account for. And it doesn't even necessarily beat out, like, Parvati's field analysis is still relevant because it's +3, so it will still go faster than the +2, provided you have a close enough initiative to begin with. But yeah, I think that would be a really interesting way to go. Like having, for instance, hit close. Oof. Yeah, having, for instance, 8-ball, an underdog 8-ball suddenly becoming as fast as Musashi. Or Shono suddenly becoming as fast as Musashi. Like, that really shakes things up. That could even be like the main gimmick. Like, they don't have to have like a bunch of crazy additional things, like Oberon with all his states, like, or Hannibal with all his extra dice. Yeah, I think that would really be interesting. And not too overpowered, because obviously you still have to set it up. Like, presumably there would be a tactics card where you just give it to all of your teammates in the Hexadome, or within a certain range. Like, we can assume that from the same kind of tactics cards as Laxmi has, but outside of that, obviously, they'd have to spend the time getting there, and then giving them the token, and then getting down the line, so it'd be the next character activation at least. So yeah, I think that's an obvious next step within the gameplay mechanics. Like, I'm not a tester, obviously I don't know where it would place within the development cycle, like if it's coming in 2019 or if it's even coming at all. But I do see the niche there, and I think it's unlikely that they won't fill it. But yeah, that's just my speculation on the future of the game. If you've got any thoughts on what you think the next few Aristos could bring, please let me know. Comments are open down below. See you next time.